welcome back to the channel. Sometimes the best thing you can do for a car that's just been sitting around like this Garage Find 93 is to just drive it. So over the course of the summer here, I've driven the car a couple of thousand kilometers. We took it on some road trips, we took it on some high elevation trips, like up over 7,000 feet, and I swear that the car feels freer, runs cooler, and just generally runs better. But the seat of the pantsometer is a really, really terrible measure of whether a car makes more power or not. So what I decided to do here today was load it up on the dyno. We're going to take a new baseline on the car and we'll see if just driving the car made any difference to its performance. Besides that, a couple of you pointed out when I did the 10-minute tune-up work on this car that I omitted a couple of relatively common steps, especially steps that are used trackside. One of those is a short belt. The other is a K&N panel filter. Well, I don't have a K&N panel filter. However, I'm going to try this car with no filter. So if the filter's a restriction, no filter will be at least as good as a K&N panel filter. Normally it will be better if the filter's a restriction. So we'll try that, and we'll try a short belt on the car and see what that does. Now, this is a bone stock car with an air pump and an air conditioner. It's that kind of a factory configuration. The short belt that will work on it will run the air conditioner and the water pump and the alternator, and it will omit the air pump and the power steering pump. According to Late Model Restoration's guide, that belt should be 70.5 inches. And I know some of you guys criticized me for not running a short belt before. This is my inventory of 6-rib belts. That's just belts I have in the shop. None of them are 70.5 inches. So just for today's test, I have gone to the parts store and I bought this Gates 60705, which is a 70.5 inch belt. Should be the right belt for this particular application. And we'll see if a short belt makes any difference. So that's today's test program. Let's go ahead and get this car strapped down to the dyno and we'll see how we do. Just about freezing outside. We got the car all warmed up. We got all the fans on, shop door open. We're going to drive it a little bit, make sure that everything's strapped down right and get the car warm. Then we'll take baselines. We'll get a couple of identical or virtually identical baselines to be sure that we're right. And then we'll start with the modifications. As usual, the seat of the pantsometer is just not reliable. This car made what I would say is virtually identical runs to what it made before. It actually showed just a little bit less. Now there can be small variances from day to day, and I will tell you that I did an oil change on the car and I have the engine a little bit overfilled. Overfilled enough that I'm pretty sure I get a little bit of windage losses there. So let's say it backed up very well. It's running fine. Everything's good. It's virtually no different. Let's make the easiest modification, which is we'll pull the air filter out and we'll retest it. So back in the day, we would have run a panel filter, like a K&N panel filter in here, or that's part of the 10-minute tune-up, I guess. The alternative would be, and more commonly, is it would have been switched to a cold air inlet system where you use a cone filter. The good ones place the cone filter in the inner fender. The bad ones put it up here, which might actually make less power. But this filter is not new. It's really not a bad filter though. So I don't know what we're going to get from this. We're going to find out. So I'm going to reassemble the air box. All of that will be basically stock. So no filter in here. Let's re-baseline this and see how we do. So I ran 2 passes with the panel filter removed. They backed up perfectly, and they looked like they were identical to the runs with the filter installed. So that's telling me that even this used panel filter flows enough air for the rest of the system. Now, an air filter system can help, or it can be a big restriction if you've used the wrong filter. The key is that the filter must flow at least as much air as the car demands at its peak demand. And if it does, adding a filter that flows more or taking the filter out completely will do nothing. So I'm just going to leave the filter out for now because it did nothing, and I'm going to change the belt to the short belt. What that's going to do is eliminate the power steering pump and the air pump from the system, and we'll see if we get anything for this. Putting the belt in might actually be easier than changing the filter was. All right, the big belt's out, the short belt's in. It actually did turn out to be less effort than changing the panel filter. And let me tell you what this is going to get us. Now, from an accessory drive standpoint, the car is only running the alternator, the air conditioner, and the water pump. So even though the air conditioner is technically hooked up, the clutch will not cycle if the HVAC settings are set to off, or panel, or floor, or any setting that avoids placing air on the windshield that isn't also an explicit air conditioner setting. So really, all we're running here is the alternator and the water pump. Let's see if that makes a difference. So I took 2 runs there. They looked identical to each other, backed up real clean, and that's fairly conclusive. It gained 5 horsepower and 5 foot-pounds at the wheels with the short belt. So clearly reducing that accessory load makes a difference. I will also say that the base tests were taken with the HVAC in the off position as well, so there should be no impact from the air conditioner on either of these tests. So it's pretty conclusive. We got 5 horsepower and 5 foot-pounds at the wheels. That is an amount that's probably resolvable on the drag strip, and you know, it's a 2-minute job to switch belts. Now, you probably don't want to drive around with your power steering pump disconnected on the street the whole time if you have a power steering car. So you probably want to put the other belt back on, but it's not that big of a deal to do, and obviously it makes a difference. Another thing that reduces accessory drag is underdrive pulleys, but with these cars you have to be very careful about underdrives because the alternator is already weak. So if you turn that alternator slower and use a factory alternator, you're going to really run into some charging problems. That's typical. On the later Mustangs, not so much, but on these ones, yeah, you're going to run into some charging problems with underdrives and a stock alternator. But it is a strategy that works, and in fact, at a high elevation like Calgary is, it's a strategy that's actually a little better than it is at sea level because the accessory drag represents a higher percentage of your total power, actual power at high elevation than it does at sea level or at North American mean conditions, St. Louis, say, something like that. So those are the 2 tests that you guys asked me for. No filter, short belt. I hope you enjoyed them. Let me know what you think in the comments. See you next time. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, hit that notification bell so that you won't miss out on future videos.